Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here in Williamson County, Tennessee, with my best bud, Rodney Wiles, who is also a lender here in Williamson County down there at First Bank. Rodney, how are you, man?
Couldn't be better. I couldn't be better. How are you?
You know what? I'm kind of excited about today's stuff we're talking about. What we're getting into today is really um, last week we talked about the shifting market because the market is going from one place to another. It's shifting big time. I've been doing this a couple of decades, and I've seen some changes, with the crash and that kind of stuff. But generally, except with the exception of maybe you would agree with this and tell me how you feel, with the exception of COVID, market shifts, even back in the crash, are generally pretty slow. Would you agree with that, kind of?
Yeah, except the one in 2000. I think it may have been like 2003 or something. It went like a light switch. But other than that, we tend to talk about like we are now, the leveling out of prices, and then the small drops of 1% and things like that. So yes,
Yeah,
outside of a couple of occasions, it's been slow.
been pretty slow. And but the interesting thing about the capitalistic market is that people are looking to gain their best benefit, and it raises all tides. That's how capitalism. I'm a big fan. It prices adjust as they should based on market demand and things like that. And that's if there was a macro picture of the market and how it works, real estate's a really good one. I mean, I suppose the fastest response time, would be the stock market because that can happen in nanoseconds these days. But with real estate, so my whole point is the market's shifting, and what today's show is about is what's the connection between buyers are watching home prices, and we're not talking about crashes or anything like that. There's one guy that's his deal. He talks about home markets crashing, housing bubbles, and the rest of it. That's not happening. Nonetheless, but everybody's watching for purchase prices to drop. Now, you work with an awful lot of buyers. I would suggest exclusively. Have your conversations been more along the lines of people looking for deals or mortgage rates or both?
Mine really hasn't changed much. It's a lot of the same as far as the conversations. People who are looking, or it's a seems like it's a good fit for them to buy right now. Is their situation, whether they're moving up, or doing different things, getting ready for next school year, things like that. There's not much. I haven't heard much of, but like I said, I'm not talking. The sample size I'm talking to is minuscule compared to like this article. So it's hard to tell. But mine's pretty normal conversation. It's not like I think they're just letting it play out versus thinking about it. If that makes sense, it's easier to negotiate. It's easier to homes are on the market for a second longer. So I think it's just playing out versus them actually talking about it or with me about it.
Yeah, I took out some clients over the weekend, and we've been talking. If anybody uh, cares enough to pay attention to the real estate news, not everybody. Why would you, unless you're maybe in the industry? But there's people that I know that are like freaks about. They may not even be in the market for houses, but they like real estate. They like window shopping, meaning looking for houses that are on the market, and they're crazy about it. But as I was taking people out this weekend, and it was in a premier neighborhood, I have to, and this is real estate reality check. I am as honest as I can be with my clients, meaning I have never in my 20 years tried to sell a house. I don't do that. I don't go in and say, look at these lovely countertops. Oh, wouldn't you look good? Or wouldn't a turkey look good on that countertop? That's not me. For me, I wait for them to say, I like this house a lot. What do we do next? I wait for that. I'm not going to try to sell anybody on anything. That's not my deal. I've never been comfortable doing that. But I'm telling people as I'm taking them around, we went down to the West Haven area, which is kind of in Williamson County. West Haven's kind of premier. It's a live, work, and play neighborhood. I had to tell them that with all the news and all the stuff, and even in Williamson County, I'm going to include us now in the headlines that home prices seem to be dipping just a little bit. Home sales have slowed down. I have to tell these folks as we're looking at stuff, be careful with the houses that are on the market for 1 and 2 days, because those are at, unless it's the house of your dreams, be a little bit careful, because there's the same category of house that's been on the market 60 days. Those people are ready typically to negotiate if they can. So I'm just saying, in the midst of what we've been talking about, shifting markets, what happens is that home buyers, and I know, Rodney, you deal with this every day, they become vigilant. And that's one of the reasons I really hopefully we've hooked up with the idea of Reddit recently. And that the short story, if you're not familiar with Reddit, they call it the front page of the internet. And instead of it being the wild, wild west, they've got moderation, and the people, although everybody is anonymous, people are polite, and they get yanked, man. I mean, you can get banned in a heartbeat on Reddit. And so people are honest when they have issues and they have things to talk about. They're honest. So the first story I wanted to talk about was actually an article that was in Yahoo. They've got a real good finance department. But the title of the thing is, show it this way, a 32-year-old husband wonders if home ownership is filled with regrets. We see a lot of our friends and family starting to buy homes. Now, but what this article is it's based on a Reddit thread. So we'll get into that in just a second, but let's touch on this. Buying a home is a core part of the living the American dream. However, home ownership doesn't guarantee that you've made it. I got stories that would absolutely confirm that's sometimes it doesn't work out. Buying a home can create a host of new problems, and one Redditor wanted clarity. A 32-year-old husband posted in the middle class finance subreddit. Subreddit is just a subtopic in Reddit, hoping to discover if buying a home is the right move. If there's a question that's on every home buyer's mind, I don't care who they are, that's it. Is this a good time to buy? That's most of the time the question I get as a realtor. Maybe you do, or maybe if you've gotten past that decision by the time they get to you, Rodney. What would the answer be to that? Have they gotten past, is it a good time to buy when they talk to you?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, a lot of them are realtor referrals and past clients that's already looking and things like that. So I'd say you're accurate. That's a good assessment there.
If they've gotten past that, yeah, because I mean, you're getting pretty downstream. Now, for me, in my world of real estate, the first thing I do when I contact with somebody, whether it's somebody I know, whether it's a referral or somebody that's new to me, is I send them to the lender first. And if that scares them off, then that's probably a good thing. But generally speaking, I send them to the lender first. And so maybe my referrals, you might get more of that question because, hey, nice to meet you. Here's Rodney's number. That's the way I do it. So to continue, the couple's friends and family have been moving to areas with lower costs of lower living cost. To summarize, what they're getting at is when somebody wants to buy a house, you can look in the Franklin area, which is pretty darned expensive. It's expensive. It's not California expensive, but it's expensive for Tennessee. If you want to live in that area, but it's too expensive for you, you start pushing out, drive a little distance from the city, and you'll run into Spring Hill or Fairview, and you'll start to save money. You'll spend less. You get more bang for your buck. That's what they're talking. Moving to areas with lower living costs. That's what they're talking about, is spreading out. But is that the right move for them? The Redditors debated, the people that chimed in on his story, which is awesome, debated the value of buying a house versus renting. That was what their question was. Is it better to rent versus buy? Rodney has his stance. We'll get to that in just a second. I'm fairly clear. I know what that one is. But some of the top comments seem to side. Some of the top comments seem to side with renting. My only caution when we say that is consider the source. Somebody that's comfortable with renting and maybe can't do much about that is going to be perhaps pro renting. I'm just saying maybe that's the case. Is that a fair? Am I taking that right? You think?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably there's a zillion reasons why people rent, but I mean, yeah, we'll jump
Okay.
into the article and I'll add my three
Okay.
cents.
All right. So the top comment came from someone who told the husband not to compare himself with others. While avoiding comparisons is always a good idea, it's especially true for big financial decisions like homeownership. 100%. I couldn't agree more. I don't know there. We'll look up his handle in a second, but don't compare. Don't feel like you have to move into a bigger house just because somebody else is. What's good for the couple's family and friends may not be good for them. Some people buy homes when they want to raise families. The couple has 2 children, but that doesn't mean they have to stop renting, and that's also true. Final thought on this particular article: if the couple's needs change in a significant way, then homeownership may be the proper route. However, the top commenter's reply resonated with many of the community because it felt like the husband was looking at his family and friends when assessing if buying a home was worth it. In other words, I'm not doing well enough for my family. That's what I'm reading into that, I think. Final thought. One of the biggest benefits of owning a home is that you can build equity with each monthly mortgage payment. You can eventually become debt-free and pay a lot less for your property than a lifelong renter. I don't know where the debt-free pops in there, but maybe. Rodney, any thoughts as I drift into the Reddit thread?
Um, it's I totally get but one thing I kind of always revert back to and look at is just how's it personally, what do I like look at? And if I just don't see the allure of investing, if that person actually accomplishing that if they don't own a house. Like, I don't know anybody that I know a couple people that rent, and I don't look at them as investment kings, or I look at them as like they may not be able to buy a house or something.
Right.
um, so yeah, I just don't see the person they're describing ever, like the great investor that rents, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't see that person. I don't know him personally. I've never met him. I've met great investors or people who like to trade and very knowledgeable about it, but they've all owned property.
Yeah. And for anybody out there that's renting, this isn't a judgment thing. What I'm getting at on this story is that it sounds like this gentleman, and we're going to get into his thread here in just about 2 seconds. Here we go. Do it this way. And I know if you're looking at this on YouTube, you probably can't read this very well, but I just wanted to show you that it's there, and this is where I'm drawing the information from. What was interesting to me about this story is it seems that probably this fellow is he's prepared to buy. That's what it sounds like to me. But he's asking the question, is now a good time? And it seems like real estate during my whole career, it's when people start talking about buying a house, it's like they're in Vegas. Am I pushing all in? Am I going to hit me again? It seems like people are treating it like a gamble. And I know Rodney hopefully will go off on it's not a gamble if you're thinking long term. So let me get in just the top end of this and then we'll move on. So this is the story coming from the fellow that the article was written about. Just curious, and this is how these go in Reddit. It's excellent. Let me see, push this over here. Whoops, no, I didn't want to do that. Sorry about that. Just curious, my spouse, 32 female, and I, 32 male, I don't know why I said that, it's because it's in there, have been discussing whether or not we should start looking to buy our first home. We have 2 young kids under 3 and live in a very high cost of living area. Could be anywhere. We see a lot of our friends and family starting to buy homes, but in mostly middle class cost of living areas. She thinks we should move to one of the areas to get a home, but I think we'd regret it since there are better career opportunities for me where we currently are. We currently rent and enjoy the area we're in, but do feel like we are behind. Isn't that an interesting comment? By not owning a home. Curious if there's anybody else who bought and has regrets or anything you wish you considered more. And so the first guy hops right in there and says, don't keep up with the Joneses. Home ownership is a financial decision, not an emotional one. I agree. Thank you. That's a really good one. And Goosey, I guess, is the name. Also, commuting is totally acceptable, and remote career opportunities too. I'm assuming since you're in a very high cost of living area, you're a career folks making a decent income with your salary. So talk to an accountant to see if it makes financial sense. Let's start there, Rodney. What's your take on all of that so far?
It sounds like, I'm going to show my age. It sounds like somebody young saying
Yep.
that.
Yep.
It's, I get all that. I really like the advice of don't compare yourself to the Joneses, or don't, the article made that like one of its very first points is don't compare yourself to somebody else. And even when if you feel like you're behind, that's, you are comparing yourself to somebody else there. So the thing I look at is like, is it a good investment to buy a house? And for long term, it's played out year after year after year that it's, now, is it the right month? Is today the best day possible to buy your house? Well, it may not be. When 4 out of 5 buyers are saying it's, they think it's time to wait, or they're waiting, they're creating that market. They're creating it that it's a better time to buy just because they think it is. So whether you wait today or 6 months, I think the idea of home ownership is essential for most families. And then when I say that it sounds like they're young, they don't have kids, and sounds like they don't, and worried about where their kids are going to go to school and who their kids are going to grow up around, because that's one of the number one things that influences children is where they grow up or at, their surroundings. So yeah, I'm never a big fan of, I just don't see the discipline in everybody to like, the benefit of not buying a house is that you're mobile. You can move out. You can move out of your apartment at any time. And I'm like, big deal. Is that really, you buy a house, you're stuck in one spot. Is that really a bad thing? But for long-term wealth, buying versus renting is no comparison. I think every single person who's ever bought would recommend you buying again. And that's, hundreds of million people. So I like the fact that they do give some good comparisons. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. It is a very individualized decision, but I think that, could currently you get a better deal 3 months down the road? You very well could. I mean, this market is weird right now to where, if, like I said, in my opinion, if 4 out of 5 people are saying it's time to wait, then it is time to wait. Like they're creating that market to where, more houses are being listed, less are selling, and you can potentially get a better deal in the upcoming future.
Yeah. And our good friend Angie from California, hope that's okay that I said that. I apologize. Our good friend Angie, I mean, that's the bottom line. If we wouldn't have bought this house 20 years ago, we wouldn't be able to pay off our next house and investing the rest for retirement. Don't take out dumb HELOCs and pay off debt. That's the deal. I mean, when Rodney talks about, and he's way smarter than me, but he's always taught me about think about long term. Now, what's changed these days in real estate when you're buying a house? A few years ago, you could buy a house and not feel like you were locked in forever for a short period of time, because home prices were going up and people were doing that and buyers weren't happy. But somebody buy a house for $400,000 in 2019 and in 2022 sold it for seven. I mean, it went up that much. You could do that. You could buy a house and not have to live in it for a long time. These days, I was just looking at statistics this morning. The average home price went up 1.5% last year. Now that's average. That's average. It's not in every area, so it could be different where you live. So if you're going to buy a house now, it used to be, we would say, if you're going to be there at least 5 to 7 years. Now, then it changed to 3 to 5 years. What would you say now, Rodney? If you're going to buy, how long would you be there?
Right now is it's you got to recognize the situation we're in right now is that we are getting at a point where it's really, really flat. Like there's not much appreciation, or there's a small decline in home value. So, the way I think about it, it's long term. Like, even if you have to move in 6 or 7 years, if you outgrow your space or whatever the deal is, it's you should have made enough money to be able to do that, and it locks in rent forever. It's like, that's the thing that people, when people are talking about, well, your rent is skyrocketing compared to, like, if you freeze your mortgage payment in time, and that's what you do. You buy today, your rent could be, your payment $3,000 or $4,000, and that's on a big house. But your rent in 6 or 7 years could be 8 or 9,000. That's a huge plus in trying to. So it's hard it's 100% based on appreciation is how long you would need to be able to sell it. But I just don't think like that. I never bought a house thinking, how long am I going to have to be here? It's either I want it for a rental or I want to stay in it, either one. And both of them are decently long-term investments until something changes and makes it a viable option to do something else.
Absolutely. Angie's got some really good thoughts. I think how long to stay would depend on the interest rates. Just like now, mine is minuscule compared to what's being offered today. Was very close to 7 today. So I didn't even, you notice, Rodney, I didn't ask you up front because why start with a punch in the nose? That's, hey, how you doing?
Yeah. They're actually gotten better this morning. So we're, just above mid sixes. So happy about that. But, yeah, I mean, and that's one thing you can do as well is that, I don't look at necessarily the deal I got on my house as permanent. Like, I'm going to manage any debt that I have, whether it's credit card debt or home debt or a car debt. If you get an opportunity to lower your interest at some point in time, you probably will. Andy, and I can't remember. I don't think you bought that house. Did you buy or did you refinance to that lower rate?
Oh, I bought at this rate, and it was
Okay, so you bought it. See, a lot of people may have bought it 4 or 5 or 6% and then refinanced it to 2 or 3%. And you just manage your debt that way as well. So,
yeah.
But you're right. If Angie's exactly right, it's created what's called the golden handcuffs, or whatever they've called it.
Yeah.
Is because most of the country has a sub 4 or 5 rate, and it's kept people from moving.
We had something interesting, and it flared up, and I bet you noticed it too. You probably had an influx of calls. Here in Williamson County, we get our property tax notice during this month. I think it was like a week and a half ago or 2 weeks or whatever it was. And oh my God, there we go. Good move.
Yeah.
There's Warren Buffett's buddy there. That's really good. But when people talk about buying a house, and Rodney's talking about it eliminates the rent. It does. I mean, all of a sudden your mortgage payment stays the same. It's fixed. That's yay, good for that. But people complain. You'll see it online all the time. Yeah, but property taxes go up. Well, especially with the values have gone, they've literally skyrocketed. The value of my house went up. It was huge during this tax thing. And everybody was just bitching and moaning and complaining about the taxes and all that kind of stuff. And there was a guy on Reddit, believe it or not, that laid everybody straight. He said, look, here's the deal. When you have a tax rate increase, if your assessment goes up, that's what happens. You don't pay the same tax rate, they adjust that. And so I did the math on how much my actual dollars I would pay in extra taxes, even though the value of my home went up like 43% for
Yeah.
built in the 80s, 43%. I was like, oh shit, And the difference in the tax payment was like $12 because they do this tax adjustment, They're just trying to keep it level. That's what they're trying to do. And it's interesting, that people are like, I'm gonna have to pay double taxes. No, you'll find that's not the case. You can either learn about it or find out when the bank calls you and said your escrow hasn't gone up.
Right.
So just to finish up on this topic, and here's the whole point. There's two sides of every coin. Yes, isn't an assessment like a third? For us, it's 25%. It's like they do the value, and for us here in Williamson County, I think the county was 25%, and then there's city taxes and that kind of stuff. And in Franklin, there's one special school district that you pay county, city, and then that one as well. I'm pretty sure, so you hit the triple dip on that. But to finish this thing up, and then all we're talking about is when people trying to make up their mind if it's a good time to buy. And his question was, is there anybody that's ever regretted? Here's a millennial that said, in no uncertain terms, millennial here, absolutely regret buying my home. I felt behind like you and wanted a house. It's been a disaster and I should have kept renting. I would have had more freedom, flexibility, and more money. Same here from another person. And I'll get off this because it's a little bit negative. The financial, mental, and emotional toll homeownership has taken on me is insane. I still haven't been able to paint or decorate 3 years in because things break all the time. I'm going to suggest there's more going on than it was just a bad timing. I'm thinking maybe it's perhaps a bad choice, but I only wanted to say step one in our program today is people are asking the question, is this a good time to buy and will I be happy when I do it? So yay for us. We got through that first section. That is a very millennial starts it off explaining that. Or maybe not. I don't know. That was unkind and unfair. I do my fair share of whining too. So moving on to my favorite portion of the show, and here it comes, the Rodney Riff. You gotta love that.
That's the riff.
The Riff. We're here.
All right, let's jump in. You want to pull that article up?
I do.
Basically, this article is it's a good one. It's fairly, I won't say common. So the topic is let's see. Mortgage loan bank is requesting me to fill out a proof of gift document. Break down the story a little bit. The friend's wanting to borrow $15,000 from another friend. The friend put gift in the section of the check, and then the person got a request from the bank to fill out proof of gift, asking some questions, and I think this is where they started getting nervous. The bank wanted for the donor of the gift to fill out exactly how much they were given and the relationship to the client. Um, and her first thought was, what business is it of theirs? What the relationship is. Um, but the borrower listed as the relationship as cousins, the person borrowing the money. And they're not cousins, by the way. The person says, I see this as an unnecessary risk. What say you? Basically, what asking, what would you do, or what would you say about it? And here's what I'll say about it. One, after 9/11, there was shortly after that, there was a U.S. Patriot Act that came out to where all mortgage transactions, we have to document the money to make sure the money's not going in any kind of terrorist or any kind of illegal activity where the money's coming from. So the money in mortgages, basically, they're trying to eliminate any kind of nefarious, illegal money movement whatsoever with the mortgage business. So you couldn't take, drug money and use it for give it as a gift and somebody borrow, the rest for a house. So that's number one. Number two, they're saying that they're a cousin because you have to be a family member to give donors a gift, and cousin actually doesn't meet the requirement. But I think I see where they're going with it, is that they were trying to do that. So that's the first thing. The first thing I'd say is that your friend is getting you into committing loan fraud. Even if
Ooh.
what they can do about it, I'm not sure, but it's probably not something you want to get involved in. Period. When they're asking you for the documentation, there's a reason for it, and then lying about the documentation is just getting yourself into, potentially putting yourself at risk for some kind of fraud with the mortgage. So let's jump in the comments and see what they say here. See if we get some good comments. And one of the very first ones is saying your friend is trying to commit mortgage fraud by using gift money when in fact it's a loan, and he's asking you to commit mortgage fraud too. Somebody added on, the banks care because they want to understand if the borrower has other debt or obligations. Exactly right. If you've borrowed the money, you can borrow money for a down payment. It just has to be, what's the word I'm looking for? It has to be tied to something. Like it can come from your HELOC. It has to be a note on something versus just like you can't go and get it from your credit card. You have to have a note or something like that on it. So there are circumstances you can. And then it says your friend lied and told the bank it was a gift, not a loan. They're lying again and saying your cousins. This
Original
says
post.
the original
Yeah.
poster says this is extreme precautions by the friend, but I don't know anyone who considers committing multiple counts of fraud a precaution. Here's one. Do not do this. He is asking you to commit mortgage fraud. If it's a loan, they have to include the payments in their debt. But this type of loan doesn't count. You cannot count this type of loan because it's unsecured was a word I'm looking for. It has to be secured loan.
Mm.
Let's see here. Leaving aside the concerns for mortgage fraud, which sound completely reasonable to me, there's other concerns. If you wrote gift on that check, you write a signed statement for the bank that is indeed a gift, then only way you can get that money back if your friend decides to give it back. The letter would be totally normal if it's actually a gift. It would, as long as the source as long as the person given the gift is allowable. Like you can, normally it's parents, something like that, immediate family members, grandparents, Cousins, not so much. You'll be sorry it's a felony. Um, I don't know where they got that. They got a link there. Federal mortgage fraud can carry penalties up to $1 million in fines and 30 years in prison. I will say that there is mortgage fraud going on. I rarely see somebody get prosecuted for it, especially occupancy fraud. But it wouldn't be good if somebody actually called that note due and you were called the carpet on it.
If you're the AG for New York, you should probably be careful. What do you think?
Yes. Occupancy fraud, people commit more occupancy fraud than anything, from what I can tell about, they just say it's and it's kind of old news to do that because the cost on what's called a second home or investment property is the same now. So that used to be the biggest fraud one.
Really?
And here's one. My husband had to fill out a proof of gift for the down payment come from me because I wasn't on the loan. It was a gift. The letter says the money never needs to be paid back to me. If you fill out the paper, technically he has proof that he never has to pay you back. Just saying. This is actually true. Like if say a husband and wife and one of them's not on the bank statement and one of them's not on the loan, the other one would have to gift that money. That would be a circumstance where that would happen. It just keeps on. Shockingly, it was pretty much, you loaned your friend money and your friend is telling the lender that it's a gift. That's the first count of mortgage fraud. So a lot of people, just all of them say the same thing. A lot of it is, is kind of gift letter standard and don't fill it out. So actually, I was surprised that we got so many good comments and responses basically saying, that this is not how you would handle that situation. So
that's pretty cool. Very good riff, my friend.
Thank you.
I'm telling you, I'm falling in love with that Reddit thing. I really am. It's just, you get the full gambit, but mobs are stupid, but cloud, when a group of people together, crowd think can be pretty smart, and there's good evidence of it right there. So don't do that because you could end up going to jail. And I can't help but think of Letitia James. That just keeps popping into mind. And that's maybe it wasn't a gift though. That was a different deal. All right. So now we've got home sales were canceled. Let me get into this. It's going to go really quick. We're almost done. Last year, more than 14% of pending homes. The title is more sales of homes were canceled in April. What's going on? That's the question that's being asked. Remember, first we talked about resistance to buying, asking the question, is this a good time? Now we're talking about people that are in the middle of it. They found a house, they've written an offer, they've won the offer, they're in the due diligence period, the inspection period perhaps, but due diligence, they're checking on something, and they're bailing. 14%. So the more sales of U.S. homes were canceled in April. What's going on? More than 14% of pending home sales, those are under contract, getting ready to go close, but they're in that due diligence, home sales in April were canceled. Buyers continue to be hesitant amid the nation's economic certainty. 1 in 7 pending home sales, I'm going to do this way because I like it. 1 in 7 pending home sales in the U.S. were canceled in April, its highest share of sales to fall through in April since 2020. We all know what was going on then, which was after the COVID-19 pandemic and has been declared just a month earlier stalling the nation's housing market, according to a new analysis by Redfin. I say the same thing every time. They may be my competition, but they're really good with data. Around 56,000 purchase agreements for homes in the U.S. were canceled in April. The analysis found 14.3% of the homes that went under contract in April 24. The percentage of 24, just a year ago, it was about 1% less. It says data for April dating back to 2017 was studied. Redfin said because usually buyers back out of a larger share of contracts at the end of the year rather than during what's traditionally the busiest season for home sales. I don't know why at the end of the year do you think, Rodney?
I don't know. When I read that, I wondered. The first thing I thought of was like, I always know new construction pushes to try to get as many closed as possible. And I couldn't help but think is some of those like didn't make it or something, and got pushed back. I don't know. It was a weird because they acted like it was a busy part of the season, and it's typically that's not true for me.
If there's a rush, it's for people that have a ton of money and they need to buy something for tax purposes. You'll hear people talk about that. But it also mentions here, it says rather than during the traditionally the busiest season for home sales, this is absolutely not. I mean, this has
Right. Yeah.
completely, this is a totally different market now. And it just is, Nationwide, buyers are hesitant. There's some couple of really interesting things. I'm getting heated up. Nationwide, buyers are hesitating to make a big financial commitment like buying a new home amid the economic certainty surrounding the impact of the tariff policies. It's called what it is. The tariff policies are mixed, are confusing people. It's kind of scary. And when they say new home here, they don't mean new builds. They mean new to them, I'm pretty sure. In addition to buyers having what Redfin labeled cold feet right now, other factors cited for the increased cancellations include the boost in housing inventory, now at the highest level in 5 years, and the sticker shock. Now, we're going to go deeper to that. I've got one other story to add on top of this. Atlanta has the highest rate of cancellations in April of 20%, followed by Orlando, Tampa, Riverside, California, both 19.1, and Miami. Redfin analysis looked at the nation's largest metropolitan areas. The jump in failed sales could be an opportunity for buyers, Redfin said, suggesting, now remember, they're trying to sell houses, they may have more negotiating power when a cancellation results in a home going back on the market, since there may be a perception there was something wrong with the property. There's truth to that, and there's a flip side to that. And that is, if a seller gets a certain number on a house, they're thinking, and if it didn't fail because it had a desperate inspection situation, they're going to think that that's the number. So you can negotiate, and depending on what kind of duress they're under to get out of there, it may or may not do you a big deal on pricing. Just saying, don't necessarily expect that. But we're going to pop over to this one. Here we go. This is what I wanted to add. Growing new home sales may seem a bit surprising given affordability concerns in the housing market, but these results are also the continuation of the trend we have seen in new home sales in recent months, in which less expensive homes are driving sales activity. What were we talking about 2 years ago in terms of new builds? All they got to do is make the houses smaller and sell them for less dollars, and they'll sell more houses. And that's what's been going on. The median sales price of new builds sold in April of 2025 was $407, essentially flat since last month, about 2% below April. The share of homes sold for under $400,000 increased yet again on a year-over-year basis. No wonder. People are pushing 6.5% and 7%. Affordable new builds are the catalyst for growth in the new home segment. Here we go. Lawrence Yoon, he's the economist for Realtor.com, and we've kind of beat him up a little bit. They're really positive. Narchu Lawrence said the falling existing home sales in a statement shared with Newsweek. Pent-up housing demand continues to grow, though not realized. Any meaningful decline in mortgage rates would help release this demand. That's absolutely true. Though it may not feel like it, and this is interesting, though it may not feel like it, Americans are now in a buyer's market where they have a clear advantage over sellers. while experts think that prices will remain high in the Northeast and other areas where the housing shortage is still acute. The South and other regions are likely to face significant drops. And that's what I didn't see this article until today. And it was interesting. One of the reasons, and it didn't shock me when I read it, but one of the reasons that people cancel contracts in what I'm going to call, it's not a declining market, but could you call this a flat market, Rodney, in your opinion?
You know, maybe it's getting close if it's not. I may look back and say it was a flat market, but like right now, I think we're like this area, our market, this area of Tennessee. I at best it's at worst it's flat. At best it's 2%. So it's as close. It's very close to flat. And you could look back in 2 months and it could be declining right now. But if it is, it's a percent or so. It's nothing
Yeah.
major.
But when they're talking about people, and I remember this back in, I remember this when we were actually in a declining market. And I think it's just people get in this headspace. Now, when people are buying a house, they're hyper vigilant on watching other homes in that price range. And if something gets reduced in price, they'll start to think that they're getting ripped off. Not that ripped off, that sounds a bit too aggressive, but they're not getting a good deal. And so one of the things that I tell them, I was like, well, when we find a house, and that's for this kind of market, it's for any kind of market. When I have a buyer, and if they're on auto search, now most of the time these days, people have got, it's the internet, they got Zillow, they got Realtor.com, they're searching houses like just as good as me, they've got the tools. But one of the things is I'll tell them I'm going to shut off your auto search after we put a contract in, because it never fails. 80% of the time, we'll put in a contract. I'll call them up and go, hey, congratulations, we got a contract. And they're like, yay, celebrating. By midnight, another house came on the market for $12 less than what we bought ours. Can we negotiate? Oh, God. People start watching for that, and as the market starts to dip, which is what this next article is about, house prices dip for the first time in March as housing market cools. People are going to be paying attention to that. It's just that, and I have had this happen probably twice. And as a professional, there isn't much I can do about it. But in the past, I've had people want to get out of a contract, and you can, if you I had a broker tell me 20 years ago, we've got inspection loopholes to side, you could drive your car through it, and we really do. But if somebody gets uncomfortable, not with the house, but with the deal, they can cancel it through the inspection. They can just find anything. You tell them what it is, and it doesn't even have to be a good reason. I'm not comfortable buying this house because it has cracked wall plates is legally all you need, But people will do that starting to look for deals. Now you must have experienced something like that before, Rodney.
It's this is you brought this stat came back up a long time ago. We were actually talking about this. It may have been a few years ago that I first learned about the contract cancellation stat as a market indicator, and we get it, but we get it for I don't see it very much. I may get to them after their second cancellation or something, because if if they cancel the contract pretty fast, I may never see it. Like, right, they may have
Yeah.
not got locked in and stuff. But this is a unique. This is a kind of a weird stat that I haven't known about, but in the last several years, and it's kind of wild seeing it pop up and get heavy when exactly what you're describing is they think they may get a better deal next month. And so they're walking away from contracts for multiple different reasons, but it sure seems to be happening when the home prices are flat or declining,
Or
you
softening.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had it where a neighbor, somebody can be under. Now, understand, I want to be clear. This doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it's just, and then they'll say things, and I'm just, hey, reality check. This happens. They'll call and they'll say, hey, can we talk to the lender? And I'm like, no, we can't. They're looking for, a way to get the lender to say we can't get the loan. You're going to be in jail right next to the person that had the gift problem. This is the way I see that. But I'm just saying that people will start calculating ways to get out of it. So this is that market. We're heading into that, and now we're seeing, when we see this headline, like it says here, home prices dip for the first time since March. I mean, that's a big old fat headline, and it's becoming really common. I mean, this is now the headline du jour that everybody's talking about. So just a couple of points from this. For the first time since mid-March, the national median list price edged down by 1.1% year over year. National median, national, may not be where you are. As home sellers struggled to find a market amid persistent affordability challenges and prospective buyers' growing concerns about the state of their personal finances and job security, especially if you're in a government. I'm not trying to be flippant. You got Elon dreams, The home prices softening should come as no surprise, considering that nearly 4 out of 5 home shoppers said they believe it's a bad time to buy. Oh man, I'm gonna come to that, Ange. And while the median list price, now this was interesting because people will, I bet, do you ever get into comp prices and stuff with your buyers very much, Rodney? Does that happen very often?
Only when we discuss appraisals.
Okay, yeah. Well, because I'll have people that'll come at me and they'll want to know independently on houses what their price per square foot is, and I am such I just don't agree with this price per square foot stuff. And Zillow uses it. I mean, they all use it. That doesn't add up. Price per square foot individually doesn't matter. For Williamson County, you bet it does. Big samplings, but not for specific. That's just my opinion, and I'm an idiot.
I had an appraiser one time. I deal with appraisers quite a bit, and I had an appraiser that was just like, we did a seminar, and I think the title of the seminar was like, "Stop using price per square foot." Like,
Really?
it's the appraiser absolutely. It's just to me, it's a number that you can use after the appraisal's done, like on that individual house. Like, it really doesn't. It might give somebody an idea, but it's not nowhere close. I mean, lot sizes are different. All homes are made up different. So yeah, I mean, price per square foot's, but people use it, and it's not a very good indicator of value.
And what I run into, and some people are, if you're looking now, look, if you're an investor, you're looking at the world with a whole different set of glasses. If you're looking at homes and you're an investor, that may be a part of your calculation. But if you're a home buyer and you're trying to calculate what the best offer is, here's the deal. Here's the best price for a house. You ready? This is tough. It's whatever a buyer will offer that a seller will accept.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, you can go ahead and put
Yeah.
a period at the end of that. And so while the median list price per square foot, which accounts for changes in home size, ticked up by 0.3% last week, the same time, rising, indicating rising home values, it marked the slowest annual growth since 23, further reaffirming that buying demand is waning. These trend points, I'm almost done, there's a couple of things I want to talk to Angie about. These trends point to a gradually more favorable environment for buyers this spring. One guy just I think we said it before, they flat out said it's a buyer's market, but there's no buyers willing to do anything about it, with more options on some price softening. So fresh listings nationwide increased 8.2% from a year ago. That means more and more softening, more competition. How guy that gets the house down the street's just as nice as yours. Just a couple of, here we go. Let me see. That was pretty much it. But here's the bottom line. We've talked about buyers being insecure and not being able to decide, is this a good time to buy? I don't know. Pending's getting canceled. That means for them it's not a good time to buy because they're now got question marks. It's only, everything culminates in home prices dipping. This is the market forces at work, supply and demand, the whole smack. It's, in my opinion, it's kind of a beautiful thing to watch. When people worry about a couple of things people will focus on. I'm worried that I didn't get the full market value for your house. I don't care how you sell it. If you're doing it and you're getting good exposure, you're getting market value. That's market value means what a seller is willing or what a buyer is willing to pay, and a seller is willing to accept. That's what market value is. And I'll get off my soapbox. I find that thrilling. I love that connection, how that works. Have I gone too far, Brad? Have I gone too far, Rodney?
No, I like it because it's kind of the way I look at it is you're going to get, especially if you're buying and selling, you're going to get both sides of the coin. You may get a flat market when you sell, and you're going to get a flat market when you buy. Would you rather? Because if the market's high, you're going to get a high market when you sell, and you're going to buy at a high market. So it just, it's all pretty relative. So.
Yep. And I want to address this. As a seller, I'd be pretty steamed to get cancellation at the last minute. I am telling you, we're out of time. There's just so many stories in here. I'm telling you, when I'm working with a listing and we're getting buyer interest, we're getting people that want to put an offer on the property. We work really hard to vet these people. I'm looking for buyer signals like, are these good for my sellers? I mean, will they go through? Because there's a lot of people that'll head fake you, give you a ton of money, it's proposed, and then they'll fall apart at the end. So it's your realtor's job as best as they can to kind of smoke that kind of stuff out. But I want to answer this question though. Here we go. I'd be pretty steamed if a cancellation got last minute. There better be good earnest money involved. Here's the trick. Here's the deal. As a real estate pro, I'm going to be able to cancel that contract with no risk to my buyer's earnest money, period. So be ready for that. That's, if it's going to come, it's going to come during that due diligence period, that if it fails, you're giving back the earnest money. Now, if something trips up and they want to buy your house again, you can turn that earnest money into a deposit pretty quickly. Oh man, that was, so just kind of be aware of that. A realtor recently told me their first offer. I would lean towards a yes on that. Because the first offer, generally speaking, comes with the fewest questions. And if that's a signal to me, if somebody calls and they've got a list of questions before they submit the offer, buckle up, generally speaking. You could have an analytical person, and that happens too. You just have to smoke them out. I've just done so many contracts, and I'm not 100%, but pretty close. to be able to sniff that stuff out, and that just comes from to be reality check from 20 years of getting, 10 years anyway of getting beat. That's,
Yeah. And
that's
when the other agent says that they've already put in 4 contracts and with, 4 other houses within 3 days, uh, you might be leery. Yeah.
I've had I've had people under contract saying, "Hey, can we write a contract for this
Mhm.
next house in case my current one falls apart?" No, because if they say yes, then you're buying 2 houses. Oh man, that was great, Rodney. I love that Rodney's riff, man. I'm tempted to play that music again. I love that. We're done. Ange, thanks for being here. Thanks for being such a good friend to us. We just love you for that. I really do. Hope to get to meet you sometime soon. Rodney, any final thoughts?
No, have a great week. Just enjoyed our Memorial Day and looking forward to a good week.
It was wonderful. Thank you, Ange. You have a good day too. We will see you next week. Thank you, Rodney. Thanks for everything, buddy.
All
Be
right.
fine
See y'all.
now. See you. Bye.